everybody. Welcome back to the Friday Night Prepper Pre-Party Show. I am very excited tonight to bring on a guest that we have been trying to get on here for a couple of weeks, and we're going to have some fun talking about a topic that I know a lot of the preppers and homesteaders that are, that's me. That's me. Okay, I got it. I know I had a feeling that was going to happen. I had one running in the background. Uh,
Uh-oh.
a lot of the a little echo there, yeah. So a lot of the preppers and homesteaders that watch my channel are interested, which is basically like natural remedies and things that we can do with our plant medicines, especially not just necessarily actually grid down for everyday living. Really, I mean, I know in our community, in the prepping and survival community, we tend to think about like grid down situations, but this is actually stuff that can improve your quality of life and your health right now. So I hope everybody enjoys this. We do have a couple quick rules that we always have on the channel, which is, of course, no racism, no sexism. Please be kind to any moderators. If you have any problems with anything on the channel, any content on the channel, directed at me, never at the moderators or the guests. Other than that, we're pretty much open to just all kinds of discussion here. Moderators, of course, always have permission if there's a problem to put somebody in timeout or boot them off, but we very rarely have an issue like that. And don't forget to check in the description down below. I also have links for several products that I think my audience would enjoy, some discount codes down there as well, and also links to a lot of Jess's, at least the ones that I know of and that I'm aware of. But we're gonna see if there's anything that I missed there for her content. I know I got your Facebook page and your Instagram page and your YouTube, and I think I got your website on there as well. But that being said, let me go ahead and introduce our guest here tonight, Jess from Firefly Farmstead Apothecary. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here and connecting with your community and joining in with you. I've been following you for a while now and just really enjoying what you're putting out. And you're right, it is a true way of life. And that's the way that I came into learning about homesteading and herbalism. It was just something that I did with my grandparents. It was just like canning. We went to certain places, we harvested certain things throughout the year, and it is just a way of life. So I always say, prepare, don't be afraid. And it is something that you do little by little, and I find a lot of great joy in it. And so I hope that I can share with you some ideas that might spark that joy in all of your community as well.
Awesome. I love that. And I love that. I love your content as well. We've been following each other on Instagram for a little while. So it was only a matter of time before we were able to collaborate.
Yes, wonderful. I love it.
So just to make sure that I got everything for my audience, where can everybody find you?
So I'm on fireflyfarmsteadherbs.com, and there you will find my information, classes and workshops that I am hosting both virtually and in person. I will be launching a new series in the Low Country. If you're Low Country local, we would love to have you. There is such a hunger for connecting with our homesteading herbal prepping community here, and it's really being embraced, but online as well, because it's not always convenient to meet up in person. And I also do integrative herbal wellness consults. And being a clinical herbalist has been my passion and also my primary profession. I'm one of the few people that have been able to do that. I've worked in a functional medicine clinic alongside family medicine practitioners that were IFM certified, and I got to really exercise my clinical expertise in that venue, where I learned to help people that had chronic conditions, autoimmune type conditions, women's health issues, and kids as well. So I
Awesome.
jokingly but honestly say I have helped everyone from grandma all the way down to cow dogs. So it's, you help whomever comes through your door, and it's been the greatest joy.
Awesome. Love that. And you're also on Instagram and
Instagram, just created some content on YouTube, still figuring that out, but really loving YouTube. And TikTok, Firefly Farmstead Apothecary on TikTok, Facebook. The Facebook page has really taken off and grown, especially locally. So I'm kind of smattered all throughout the social media world, trying to find my way there. I'm by far not a social media expert, but I just feel like this information needs to be there. So anywhere I can find an audience, that's where you'll find me.
Awesome. And real quick before we start getting into some of the questions and things like that. And by the way, audience, if you have questions, please throw them in caps so that we can try to catch them. That definitely makes it easier for me if you throw it in all caps. And so on the website, you mentioned that you've got a couple classes going right now. What are the classes that you've got going right now?
The next one that's coming up is the double strength salve class. That is our homestead and family's most popular remedy, and it is the way that my grandmother taught me to make it, and it was by request. And so that'll be September 11th, and that's a virtual class. And then I'm doing a series on herb pantries and building out your own herb pantries and putting out content for that. You'll find a lot of free PDFs and downloadables. There's dosing charts for animals, which is something that can be very difficult to find, but I know a lot of us in the homestead prepping herb community, we tend to have animals, and the question comes up, okay, I'm learning how to use herbs for myself, can I use it for my pets? And some are safe, some are not, depending on the species, but there's some great info on there. There's a downloadable for inventorying your pantry, and I love connecting with all of you. So if you don't see what you want or need, just let me know and I'll get some information created for you.
Yeah, and I saw that when I was looking at your website earlier today that you could even do like video consults and stuff like that, so that if people wanted to had specific needs and stuff like that, that you make yourself available for that. I think that's amazing.
Yes, it's been, the people that come to me have generally tried everything else, and allopathic medicine has not got them what they needed. And they really need someone who's going to listen and help them rebuild those foundations of health and
Hmm.
give them hope that healing can happen. And
Hmm.
that is one of my messages over and over again, is that herbal medicine practiced properly is both safe and very effective. We kind of live in a strange world where the messages we're seeing is either it's completely mute and not effective at all, but simultaneously dangerous. And the truth is that some herbs are only safe in certain contexts for certain people.
Right.
And so it takes a lot of time and a lot of education and a lot of practice to learn those things. But once you do, you can see amazing things happen.
Yeah, the so one of the things, and you probably have seen me post about this on Instagram, that um I work in mental health, right? And I've talked a little bit about this as well, that if first of all, my personal belief is that it's up to everybody to decide how they want to treat their stuff, right? And if you want to go with natural remedies and herbal medicines, then that's great. If you want to go with modern medicines, then that's great. It's your body, you decide. But be careful that you're doing, you're speaking to somebody who knows what they're talking about. And if you are taking certain prescription medications, sometimes the plant medicines can be counterindicated because either it can be too much, or they can counteract each other.
Yes.
And there's too many combinations for us to get into like tonight, but just as an example, one that I hear a lot of people talk about is like, well, if you're and just for YouTube, because I know they sometimes monitor this stuff, everything we're talking about here is for entertainment purposes only, it's like relax YouTube. So St. John's wort, right? A lot of people will say, so if you're depressed, take St. John's wort. Well, somebody who works in the mental health field, there's maybe, but there's so many different types of depression and causes of
Yeah.
depression that might not be the right solution for you. And for certain medications that we use for schizophrenia, for example,
Yeah.
St. John's wort is actually not a good thing to take with that. It can actually be a little dangerous. So, um, it's good to learn this stuff, and people should train with somebody like yourself who has studied with somebody else and put their work in. We were talking backstage about this was something you grew up with, right? Like, you don't just open a book and all of a sudden you're like, I'm a master of this. This is your whole life. You've been doing this,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I did grow up learning this stuff, but I also went to school And so I have a degree in natural health science, as well as mentoring under some really studious, well-practiced herbalists,
Right.
some of which are traditional Chinese medicine doctors. That was when I lived in the Pacific Northwest, and I just had that luxury of being able to mentor under these different people. And herbal contraindications is a huge part of the curriculum whenever you're learning these in this fashion. And also, again, being able to work in a clinic where we had access to medical records. Now, I am not a medical provider, I'm not a licensed practitioner, and I am certainly not your practitioner if you're listening. And but it would benefit most people if they are on any sort of medication or if they have any sort of underlying condition to consult with a well-trained herbalist. And I always advocate for the person to have those conversations with their doctor and their pharmacist.
Yep.
Interestingly, when you find a good, well-versed pharmacist, they oftentimes understand herbal medicine fairly well because they understand phytochemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had some good relationships with pharmacists over the years that have helped me help my clients, you know, because we all wanted the same end goal, was that the person be able to feel better using less medications that had more side effects. And you mentioned schizophrenia, and I think that's important because there are many herbs that people with that diagnosis should avoid, just
Yeah.
in general. But one of the beauties of herbalism is that you don't need to always use those types of herbs that you're talking about. There's so many different options. And so sometimes you can use a much gentler herb and get really good results.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate you touching on that. And also, you know, you mentioned there are many different types of depression. There are also what we would consider in herbal medicine, because of course we're not diagnosing or prescribing, but we're looking at the person's constitution and we're looking at, you know, their overall makeup. And we are looking at so many different details and nuances to help guide decisions about which herb, which if you just open up a general herb book, it might just have a list, herbs for depression, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not getting what type of depression or what type of person we say in herbal medicine has this.
Right.
And so are they considered hot? Are they dry? Are they deficient or excess? So the devil's always in the details, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really important to dive in and
Yeah.
to have someone that'll walk with you and empower you. So if you have a practitioner that doesn't want to hear that from you, like a standard allopathic medical practitioner that doesn't want to have those conversations, I would highly encourage you to seek out someone else that will have those conversations with you, and also have, you know, natural health practitioners that are willing to have those conversations and be comfortable if you are in fact using medications, because most people in this country are using, you know, upwards of 3 to 6 medications.
Yeah. 100% agree with all of that. Orlando Prepper, I saw your question. I'm going to circle back to that in just a second. So I agree with exactly what you just said at the end there about if your doctor is not open to conversations about this, then remember, you know, I know we haven't always done a great job in my field of telling people that they can be their own advocate and they have a right to ask for second opinions or to fire us, right? That they, you know, if you're not happy with the services that I'm giving you, by all means, you should fire me, you know, because my job is to make sure that we've got some kind of good connection and I'm treating people's mental health needs according to what's going to work for them. That buy-in is super important in my profession. And my doctor that I go to is one of the things I love about him, and I hope he never leaves the practice that he's in, is that he is open to, different things that he's talking about. And I've said, well, I really don't want a prescription medication for this. Let me try some other stuff. How do you feel about red yeast rice, and things like that. And he actually seems to know a little bit about it. He doesn't, claim expertise and be like, yeah, I've actually read a few studies. And if you want to try that, let's do that. Let's check your blood work again in 6 months and see how you're doing. And we'll have another conversation if it's getting you where you want to be or not, So people need to be their own advocate, and understand that you have rights. Your doctor has a lot of education, but you know your body, and you're allowed to make choices about how you treat your body, and that's super important.
Absolutely. I've always seen it as my role to empower people and inform them so that they can make their own best decisions.
So I did have a question here, and we can kind of, as this stuff comes up, if you feel comfortable with it. Orlando Prepper, who's one of my moderators and a good friend of the show, is asking, do you have any thoughts on natural remedy for indigestion? So you probably, like you said, it depends, right? But what
Right.
are some of the thoughts that come to your mind here?
So I'll walk you through some of the thoughts that I have as an herbalist. If I was to have you in a in a visit with me, we'll say. And so that would be in a very extensive intake process where we would really get down to the nitty-gritty of all the things that are like 1,001 questions. So it really does depend on the person and what kind of indigestion they're having. And without getting into all of that, are you experiencing gas or bloating? Do you have what we call more of a hot type indigestion where it's a burning type sensation, or is it more pressure? But with that aside, there are a few herbs that are generally considered safe in most age groups that we can pull from that will help with tummy troubles. And again, I'm not a licensed practitioner, and I'm certainly not your practitioner at this point, but I can safely say that most people will tolerate chamomile, and most people discount how powerful chamomile is because it is so common. We just look over it. We want something that's flashier. The reason why chamomile is written about so prolifically is because it is so effective. So it helps if you're having like a nervous indigestion because it is a nervine, so it's calming the nervous system. But it also helps if you're having indigestion from difficulty tolerating your foods, and it will also help if you have got some cramping. It is also a mild analgesic. Some people aren't aware of that. It's very mild, but it does have that effect. And you want to steep it longer than you would for just a tasty beverage. So whenever we're making medicinal infusions like chamomile tea, that is what I would want to focus on there, is a little bit longer steep time and trying it several times in a row to see if you're going to get some benefit from it.
Okay.
It actually appears in Beatrix Potter's Peter Rabbit, and I do an entire class and workshop for kids. I taught it over at the Citadel at the homeschool convention, and it was so much fun. And we make Peter Rabbit tea, and we do peppermint, chamomile, and catnip. And I've got a PDF on my website. You're welcome to pop over and check that out as well. So
Very cool. Very cool. And then a couple of people threw out, and this was my go-to here, and usually would have been my go-to. Ginger, is there so you talked about the different types of indigestion.
yes.
Would there be a type of indigestion where ginger would maybe contraindicated, like it actually isn't going to help, or it could even make it worse?
So ginger is wonderful, and I personally love ginger. I'm a person that tends to be very cold, but ginger is a very spicy herb. And so ginger by itself, for some people that are having that real burny, like reflux type indigestion, it could be a little inflammatory then. I feel like, ginger's safe. It's a food. You can certainly give that a try. And even better yet, add some ginger to that Peter Rabbit tea recipe that I mentioned because they taste really well together. But if what you have is some ginger, it's like a pharmacy in an herb. Like there's so much that you can do with ginger, both internally and topically.
And I loved that you earlier there you pointed out like that like some indigestion is um uh, connected to our nerves, right? Like
Mhm.
an anxiety based indigestion, which is different from like, oh, I ate some bad fish, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um that's huge, right? So that's why I think it's more complex than somebody like myself who's just like a survivalist who knows a little bit about this plant sometimes helps with this, right? It's more complex than that. Even like with modern medicines, antibiotics, right? So a lot of preppers will think, there's ways that we can get, for example, amoxicillin, right?
Right.
And we can get it in large quantities, and I'm not going to get into that specifically here, but you can do that better with Jace Medical. I'll say that, and I have a coupon code for Jace Medical for those of you guys who are interested in getting some antibiotics. But not amoxicillin does not treat all infections. It's for
Right.
certain infections, right? So it's the same idea with modern medicine, just like in mental health, right? So we have people think for depression, like, oh, most people know what an SSRI is. Well, there's numerous SSRIs, and they all function a little bit differently. And there's SSNRIs, and there's, so that's why it's, for me, the analogy of St. John's wort works really well, because I I know some of my patients might take Prozac and it doesn't do
Mhm.
jack crap for them, right?
Right.
Other ones, it's like a miracle pill for them, and all of a sudden, like, they have energy to get up in the morning, and they're feeling better, and their your self-harm thoughts are going away, and all this other stuff. So it's just the biochemistry of all this stuff is just so complex that I wish it would be like, sure, if you got an infection, take amoxicillin and it's gonna fix it.
Right.
If it's certain types of infection, it might, right? And certain types of indigestion might do better with ginger, and some might do better with chamomile, right?
Yes, and I think that's a really good analogy. And you know, I don't believe in an all or nothing. Like I've never been a purist in the sense. I think at different stages and different places, people need different things to help them. Even if it's just symptom relief, I think
Mhm,
that's completely 100% valid.
mhm,
Whether you're using an herb or a medication. I do ask that where reasonable that people try herbs first. That's one of my mottos, like
mhm,
herbs first. And if it, and get some help with that. Get a consult with someone, take some classes and go a little deeper because it does empower you to take your health into your own hands when you do it like that. And
mhm,
then I do feel like people are even stronger whenever they're seeing their traditional allopathic doctor because they feel like they're taking a hold and accountability of their health process as opposed to it being handed to them. So I'm certainly not an all or nothing person. And I do think that your analogy really does fit that. There's a lot of complexities in herbal medicine. And that St. John's wort, just that the research articles that came out about that for depression were really problematic. And I've actually, in one of my um, mentorships. One of my mentors went into great detail about it, and I'd love to share some articles about how it was more of a media thing that took off that kind of warped the original results.
yeah.
Um, but St. John's wort traditionally was used for people that were experiencing sadness and low mood seasonally.
Mhm,
So, like we don't prescribe for diseases as herbalists, but a good analogy would just be that seasonal sadness you feel when the days are getting shorter.
yeah. That's I
And
love
so
that you said that.
it was very effective for that. But just generalized depression and anxiety,
Mhm,
while some people may get results for that depending on their makeup, it wasn't as simple as that ever.
mhm. Coffee First asked about, and I've heard this one too as well. Apple cider vinegar for, I'm thinking more for like that heartburny stuff. That was always, I've never done it and I don't get
Mhm.
heartburn that much, thankfully. But it's surprising to me that some people get relief to that. Do you understand the biochemistry of that at all?
Sure, yeah. Some people actually have low digestive juices. We call it their digestive powers. Their digestive chi energy is low, and so essentially they're not breaking down their food properly, and that can be very beneficial for them if you actually truly do have um, a GERD situation where either anatomically now you're having some of that acid come up or you are truly over acidic because generally you're feeling that burn, but it's just the body producing more acid trying to mediate the fact that it can't break the food down. And so those types of people that aren't making enough acid, if they use the apple cider vinegar, or some people say like the pickle juice, if it's the
Mm,
old indigestion bar remedy pickle juice, um, they'll see relief from that as well. But it's going to inflame things, right? If you're on the opposite spectrum of that. And if it's not too bad, I guess you could try it. I mean, I've tried it on myself and realized that, what I actually needed was some digestive enzymes and some cooling herbal remedies. So for me, what works really well is marshmallow root, slippery elm, those types of things, because they repair that gut lining. They go in and coat it. They create a protective barrier, and they're generally really well tolerated.
Awesome.
And when we do that, when we use them for that, those types of herbs you actually want to make into a nourishing infusion, and specifically a cold nourishing infusion. I have a whole class. I've done both online and in person for that. It's a lot of fun. It feels like you're taking shots of snot. I'll just say it. It's really, but you can see those polysaccharides are in there that are coating your gut, and you get a real intimate connection with it. And
Okay.
some people will purchase like the slippery elm capsules, but it has to be saturated in a fluid in
Okay.
order to work. So it doesn't really do the work like that. You're just adding more steps for your body to have to do.
Gotcha. On a related note, and this is a question from me, not so much from the audience. So I talk about sometimes with my audience that diarrhea is like the number one killer on the planet. Most people don't realize that because we live, fortunately, I know here in South Carolina, there's been some issues with the water lately because of the storm. But that aside, we mostly have safe drinking water in the United States. In most parts of the United States, it's safer than a lot of other parts of the world. Almost too safe, right? Because our gut bacteria doesn't develop some of the natural enzymes and bacteria that other cultures do. But diarrhea is a huge killer around the world. And
Yeah.
from a survival perspective, I want people to know that I carry Imodium with me when I travel, which is a modern medicine, right? And when I'm backpacking, I carry Imodium with me. But what is maybe a plant alternative that could be possibly helpful in a situation like that if somebody's just like having their water is just running through them faster than they can replenish it?
Yes. So I have a few thoughts for that. And actually, I lived in the Pacific Northwest on the Continental Divide and raised my oldest three up there. And sometimes we lived very remote to begin with, and sometimes we were truly off grid. I mean, that was just way of life. We just went camping for a few weeks at a time. And so things will happen. People will get sick.
Mhm.
And fortunately, Grandma had taught us how to handle a lot of those things. And there are some other great herbalists that specialize in more austere environments, but just in general, as a person who loves to be outdoors, like I've found myself in remote situations and for a number of different reasons. And you do the best you can with what you have, and that's where that knowledge base comes in, because you don't always think to pack everything. And that's another reason for reading the books, studying alongside other people in your community, so that when it happens, you have a few different options in your plant communities that you can grab for. But one herb that I almost never leave home without is that slippery elm or marshmallow root. Now, slippery elm is endangered, so you can get it ethically harvested. Marshmallow root is a little cheaper and more widely available, and they're fairly interchangeable. And they are cooling, calming, and soothing to the digestive tract, and they're well tolerated. So you can mix them in with a little bit of water and take little bits of that, or almost make like a porridge with it and take bites of that. And because it turns almost gelatinous, it will absorb some of the water
Okay.
whenever you're having diarrhea that's just running through you. So it can calm some of that inflammation and also slow that down. There are two other plants that come to mind. There's an entire list of them that you'll see listed for diarrhea if you start thumbing through various herb books. But I would say the one that I would say most commonly known is
Mm,
golden seal extract, or Oregon grapefruit. And so those are really high in tannins and alkaloids that are astringent.
okay.
Astringent things pull tissue together. So you're pulling all that tissue together to try to slow down it coming out. and drying things out. They're very drying herbs. And they also have some antimicrobial properties. So that family of herbs is what I would be looking for. And Oregon grapefruit grows really prolifically in most of the US.
Awesome.
And then blackberry root. So blackberry root, raspberry root, because I haven't tried thimbleberry. That's really quite prolific as well if you're into wild crafting and whatnot. I suspect it would have similar traits. I don't know that for sure, so take that with a grain of salt. But if you are anywhere where you find any sort of blackberries or raspberries, the roots will also have that very astringent drying property.
Awesome.
Plantain as well, for that matter. Plantain
Mhm.
is mildly antimicrobial, and it's also soothing, and it is, you know, it's pretty likes that disturbed ground.
I have so many questions. I could go on all night with you. Let's take one more that I saw Rural had posted here, and then we were gonna shift gears because there was another topic we were gonna hit on here too. So Rural was asking some thoughts on a natural way to treat headache, such as hunger, lack of caffeine, and stress. So again, those are like 3 different types of headaches, right?
Yeah.
But let me see if I can take a guess at this and tell me if I'm on the right track. My initial thoughts, again, as somebody who doesn't have the same kind of training as you, more like basic, like survivalist plant medicine, would be I would want some stuff that's going to be like a vasodilator that's going to expand the blood flow to the brain. Am I close?
You can be, yes. An entire category of herbs for headache tends to do that. So that's like our ginkgo gluticola, lesser so peppermint. People see relief in that. So certainly, yes, there's a rich history of that. Other things for different types of headaches that people have found beneficial are rosemary, and a lot of people will have rosemary available either for cooking. They might have an herb for rosemary, and even the rosemary essential oil can be very powerful for helping focus and for head pain. The ginger, we talked about ginger earlier, and ginger is phenomenal for headache, and it works for a lot of different types of pain because it's an anti-inflammatory. And if you use ginger and you make a compress with it, so you make first a really strong tea, and then you drench a flannel, and then you put it over your forehead or the back of your neck, that will actually stimulate the circulation on the surface of the skin. And that can change the way the blood is flowing, as well as you get that aromatherapy from the ginger, and you're absorbing some of it. We actually know that we absorb more than we ever thought through our skin. For herbs, there's medications that, we have transdermal patches, things like this. And so that can be beneficial. So there's a lot of different ways to tackle it. But if you're experiencing headaches more than just a one-off type situation, then I would like to really insert that it's probably your body and your system trying to tell you it's time to do some self-care on probably a few different levels. And I would first look at, hydration and rest, caffeine. You mentioned caffeine. So it sounds like you really know some of these things already. Stress levels for sure. If you suspect that stress levels are part of it, then if you're having difficulty sleeping, then one of the herbs that I really like are some of the nervines. So those are the calming, relaxing herbs. And that's going to be like your milky oats or your motherwort. Some of those do have contraindications, so make sure you're doing your research with them, because like I said, I'm not your herbalist. I'd love to be, but just do your due diligence there.
Yep. And if you're just tuning in right now, check the description down below. I've got links to Jess's content, and go ahead and give that website again, just so people know, because she does consultation. She can make herself available for paid consultations, and has some classes on her website as well. What's your website again?
FireflyFarmsteadHerbs.com.
Okay. I wanted to shift gears a little bit here. One last thing though, that with the you were talking about the peppermint. So I actually that's my go-to when I have a headache is and not orally. I do topically a little bit on
Mhm.
the back of my neck, and 9 out of 10 times for me that will knock it out. Now I know a lot of my headaches are because I have a job where I'm sitting all day long and
Right.
I'm engaging with people for 8 hours of a day. So a lot of it is posture, a lot of it is my back from doing this for 25 years and stuff like that. So I get some heat relief on the back of my neck with that. And then the smell also seems to like open up my nasal passages. So I'm breathing a little bit better. I don't know if that's exactly what it does, but it seems to work for me like 9 out of 10 times.
That's wonderful. And peppermint certainly is very useful for all of those purposes. It's a very spicy, cooling herb. It's going to help some of the stress levels. It's going to help some of that uh, muscular stress as well and tension. I think it's just great that you have been experimenting with it and that you found something that works for you. I think that is really, truly, that's a powerful thing to do for yourself. So that's super exciting.
I did have a little bit of help. I had, some other people like yourself that have given me some like, you could try this, that kind of thing. And so it wasn't like completely like shooting in the dark. I had some guidance along the way.
That's wonderful. I love those stories like that.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the other thing, which you and I were talking backstage about. And so we're going to audience, we're going to shift gears here a little bit, which is the censorship issue, which is it's getting and this is kind of what you and I started connecting on a little bit more in the last few weeks of the frustration with it's I try to put out content that's prepper and survivalist related. You're trying to put out information for people about natural remedies and herbal medicines, and we both are running up against this brick wall, especially on the meta platforms. I'm finding it more so.
Yeah,
um it's getting and my fear, I want to hear your thoughts on this too. My fear is that it's this bad now. I'm worried about what the future looks like if censorship continues to go down this path of we're having a hard time even getting this information out to people, right? What do
right.
you think?
Certainly that's been my experience, and I know that lots of other people in other areas that I was kind of surprised were getting censored as well. And so, like chicken talk, chicken lady, anything homesteading related, anything I feel like that empowers people to take care of themselves. And that's a real trigger for me. I it feels so strongly that people should have the right to information and to be able to make their best choices for themselves. And I feel like that's my job. That's my entire job as an herbalist and as a natural health practitioner is to provide you with as many resources to help you sift through them and to empower you to make the best decisions for yourself. And I take issue with anything or anyone that is that's impacting that in a negative way. Um, and I support people. Your ideas don't have to be the same as mine. I just want
Right.
us all to have access to those things. I know that these different platforms are privately owned, but I did encounter some information about the FCC suppressing, or not sure that's the right word, but just saying the word supplement or vitamin is severely um, suppressed now
Mhm,
across the
mhm.
board, which is shocking to me that we now live in this space. I've had videos about harvesting usnea be banned because it was considered inappropriate. Like, just it's just been mind blowing, and um, I've since just kind of started to have fun at it, and some of my content is now just poking fun at it. Whenever it comes up and my stuff gets flagged, I'm like, okay, well, I must be doing something right. I hope someone out there somewhere is finding it. And I think that's why it's so important to continue to build connections and community like you're doing and being here in this space in YouTube so that we can all come together and share what we do know. Because I have 4 kids and I want them to be able to decide for themselves. I truly passionately 100% believe that each of us is here to share whatever knowledge we might have and that deserves to be able to be generational knowledge, because that's how I learned.
And I believe that adults are capable of making critical decisions, right? And being critical thinkers and making their own decisions, and that it shouldn't be the role of, I mean, obviously, like there's some stuff that most people would agree, like we don't want to, most rational people would say, we're not going to put plans to how to build a bazooka online, right? Like that's not going to happen.
Right.
But beyond that, like beyond like the obvious, like this is going to cause a problem kind of thing. So I post, a lot of knife reviews and stuff like that. Now, I've never once shown my videos being used in a self-defense, my knives being used in a self-defense manner, and don't even like talk about that, right? Like that that it would be used for anything other than survival, bushcraft type tasks. And they start, and I saw that they were going after some other content creators first,
Right.
and I caught my attention, but I thought, well, they haven't come after me, and maybe like they were doing something wrong and I wasn't. And
Right.
so I kind of stayed out of it, which now I feel terrible that I did. And sooner or later they did. They came after me and they started like censoring me really heavy. Now, for those of you guys who aren't on Instagram, you don't know, but one thing that Instagram does do at least is they tell you like why you're being censored. Whereas YouTube, if you start getting censored, they're just going to say, no, we don't do that. But they
Right.
do. Right.
Yeah.
So at least Instagram does tell you, no, we're censoring you and here's why. And so they pretty much had said, well, we recommend you take down these pictures of knives and these videos of knives, to which you probably saw I recently posted that no, I'm not going to do that, because I think this is good content and I think these are good companies, and I'm proud to say that this is a good tool that I'm happy to recommend, that if you're looking for a tool to take with you when you go out in the woods for your backpacking trip, I trust this tool, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying use this as a weapon. I'm not, and I wouldn't. I don't. That's not the type of content that I create. So I started making a joke about it too, and I posted a picture of me holding a butter knife, by the way, a plastic butter knife, and I put a censorship sticker over it, and I said, I would like to show you this tool, but Instagram won't let me show it to you. And they actually flagged that one and recommended that I take it down.
It's just absurd, right? It's
Yeah,
just absurd. You're like, what universe do we live in right now? Like,
right.
and for me, the things that are allowable that would not, like I'm not exactly young, so the things that are available on daytime television, for example, have skewed so differently from what is viewable, and it just, I don't know. There seems to be not a lot of rhyme or reason to it, except for this common thread in this is just my personal opinion, of anything that empowers you to take care of yourself. Like, I feel like a lot of us are getting, attacked in this. And maybe that's just because that's the community that I tend to lean into. So maybe that's why I'm hearing that. Maybe everyone's experiencing it, but um,
It
you know,
feels that way.
yeah,
It's certain.
like it's like, well, if I just wanted to sell you something, TikTok Shop has supplements that I could just sell you. I know they're not quality, so I'm sorry, I'm not.
Right.
I want you to know how to do it for you. That's the
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. It's really sad. It's sad that people can't be allowed to make that decision for themselves, right? Because I see content on Instagram that I don't like and that I don't want, and guess what I do? I click the little button that says not interested, don't recommend
Hmm.
again, and eventually it learns not to show me that stuff. So why can't we just use those tools, right? So if somebody doesn't want to see herbalism content, or if they don't want to see knife content, they could use those tools, and those who do should still be able to access that, right? It's not like X-rated pornography.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And I doubt that Instagram's going to bend. I doubt. I know there was a while ago there was some political pressure that was going on, where on both sides there was pressure on Instagram to moderate their content more, and then there was pressure that they were suppressing voices, and specifically in political stuff, right? That they were,
Right.
you know, and so I was hopeful when that was coming up that like, okay, maybe if there's enough political pressure that they're silencing these conservative voices, that maybe that opens up for like, we need to have a discussion about what is free speech and where does the line get drawn on this, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
they're private companies, sure, I get that, but somewhere in there is that this is the modern day equivalent of town square, and somewhere in there should be the consumer's right to choose what they
Yes.
want, with maybe just, in my mind, there's just a few exceptions that I could think of, right? Obviously I don't want to see kids being hurt, and that doesn't belong on any platform,
Hmm.
things like that are pretty, it should be, we all agree on that.
Yes. I mean, if something's truly illegal, that might be one thing,
Right,
to consider.
right.
Or harming self or others, that's another thing. But um, yeah, I mean, it did push me to start investigating X
Oh,
venture that I've been looking into, just because it seemed like they were a little
yeah.
less stringent.
So I have the most reach on X. I have like
Okay.
27,000
Wow.
followers on X, but I will say it is the Wild West. Like,
Is it?
you get, when you ask for free speech, there's consequences to that too, and it is the Wild West. I can get why some people won't like that. I do.
Yeah.
So I hope that platform doesn't go away, because that's probably the last bastion. I mean, I'm not on Truth and I'm not on Rumble or some of these other ones, so I can't comment on those. But you said even like TikTok has gotten very censorship heavy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think for a lot of us, I'm guessing, despite the fact that we're on here talking about this and that we spend so much time in the online space, a lot of us, at least for myself, I'm here because I'm so passionate that others be able to access it. It's not a space that I'm necessarily comfortable in. I would much rather meet with people face to face.
Yeah.
Um, but it's too important not to be offering this information, because we don't live in generational type of homes where we would learn these types of survival skills, foraging, bushcrafting, even like self-protection and such. Like a lot, it only takes 2 generations to completely lose a skill.
Yeah.
um so that's because that is one argument that I come up against. Well, if you don't like their rules, then don't be there. And I'm like, sort of.
Yeah.
Sort of.
I mean, if it comes down to that, there's platforms where, like Twitter X, where their free speech is going to be more open, and then Meta just isn't, then for now at least people have a choice. But what happens, and because there's a concerted effort to drive X into the ground,
Right.
the mainstream media hates Twitter X, and they would like nothing more than to see that fail. So Elon does that, and it's not making any money at this point, right? Like it's a net loss for him, but he does it because he believes in free speech. What happens if Elon suddenly says, "Guys, I can't keep doing this. It's just I'm pouring money out the window," and
Right.
then we lose the last bastion of free speech
That's
online.
true. Yeah. Well, then you gotta come to an herb class, like like the old days.
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess it goes back to word of mouth. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
So one thing that yeah, and that's I know I think it was Burpee Yoga Uncle told me that too, because I had made a comment about like how I didn't like to see racism and sexism, and he said, yeah, but if you don't have any tolerance for that, then that's where it starts to we whittle away at free speech. And I had to think about that, and I said, well,
Yeah.
I think he's right. And I can choose to say, I don't want to see that, but
Yeah.
I don't want to take away somebody else's right too. That makes sense?
It absolutely. I had a friend who was a lawyer many years ago tell me one of the things you have to remember in law is the sword always slices both ways.
Yeah.
And that makes me rethink everything. And that is why I do, you know, I truly believe that, as you said, people should, as adults, be able to make their own decisions.
Yeah. So the only thing that I've found, and I think you kind of hinted on it before, as we try to figure out like how do we continue to get this word out, is that I try to lift up voices to the people that can see me, and like such as yours and other people who are putting out content that I know is getting suppressed, but it's good content, it's valuable content. So I shout them out in stories, and I can't shout every single account that I follow every single day, but I make that part of my daily routine is to say, hey, go check out, Firefly Farmstead Apothecary. They got good content, and go check out Bushcraft Kelso. He's got really cool ideas on how to mod your gear, and go check out Maccabeus. He'll show you how to build a lantern, and things like that, because that's the only thing I've found that's still within my power that we can do.
I love that, and you do a phenomenal job of that, and I enjoy everyone that you share on there, and I truly wouldn't have found them if I wasn't following you.
Thanks.
Um, yeah, it leads me to, when are you going to do like one of those summits or something? So so people can just all show up in the same space and the same
I
time.
tell you what, if I had the time, I would organize something like that. My cup runneth over.
I bet.
I've got more than I can handle. In fact, I'm turning down projects.
I
Um,
bet.
I
Yeah.
I get emails every day. I got a really big offer today to work on a project with a company that I've worked with before, and I like their product, but I said I'm sorry, I'm overloaded, and I can't give you the quality of time that your product needs right now. So I have to turn this down so that you can go to somebody else.
That's a good problem to have, though.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
Networking.
it's, yeah, I think it's a testament to the fact that you do focus on lifting people up, and you educate in a form, but you do it in a way that is empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's check our last couple things on comments here, and we'll start to wind this one down. Um, yeah, it doesn't include incitement to violence. I agree with you, Vicky, that like that's one of the lines that I think we all have to agree on, that we can say stuff that other people might not like, but it's not okay to call other people or try to get other people to commit violence. That's when you're starting to violate other people's rights. Thank you for that, Orlando. Yeah, actually make sure you're checking out Jess's content as well, folks. There's links in the description. She's got really cool stuff. Definitely check out her website as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start to put a bow on this one. And before I give up my closing thoughts, what do you got coming up? Any new projects that you want to talk about?
Well, I've been doing a series on building your own herb pantry, and that is a lot of fun, especially if you're someone that has started building your homestead or your family pantry. This is just an extension of that and just doing it in a thoughtful way. I've got some free downloads for inventorying your herb pantry. So that's a neat series that's online. And I'm also offering a double strength herbal salve class. The herbal salve is our family's favorite product and item that we make, an herbal remedy, and it's certainly something that clients and customers have loved over the years. So I got a request to teach everyone how to make it, so I'm going to be doing that. That's September 11th, and that's a virtual class.
Awesome.
And other than that, I will be launching a local, low country herbal medicine making group. And so we're going to try to create some reoccurring meetups so that everyone can learn how to start building their own home apothecary and learn these hands-on skills.
Well, let me know when you do that, because you and I, so the audience might know this, and this is just by coincidence. We actually don't live far from each other, and I didn't realize that until fairly recently when she posted something on Instagram that was also going on close to me, and then I was like, she's got to live kind of close to me. So,
The
uh,
water was rising.
no, yes, the water was rising for sure. So yeah, so sometimes people will ask me like, hey, can I come and train with you, Sarge? And number one, I don't have time. Number two, if you're going to train, if you're looking for content on like herbs, then maybe in herb medicine and plant medicine, then maybe you're better off to train with Jess, who's definitely more of an expert on this than I am, and that I ever will be. And sometimes people will ask me about foraging as well. Do you do that like as well too, or no?
Yes, we've done plant foraging classes. I do homesteading, plant foraging classes for grown-ups and for kids. And
Cool.
I guess I should mention I'll also be teaching homesteading classes for a homeschool co-op that will be reoccurring throughout the year, throughout the semester. And that's going to be middle school through high school.
That's
And
awesome.
I am super excited about that as well.
I love that. That's awesome. And yeah, and speaking of like the censorship thing too, I keep telling people those are the next two communities that are going to get targeted is
Yes.
homeschooling and homesteading.
Yep.
And it's already starting to happen. I've
It
heard
is.
from people. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's anybody that is teaching people how to be more independent seems to be that's what they're targeting.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, you just gotta, reach out to your neighbors, get to know each other, both virtually and in real life, because we can build communities virtually that aren't dependent on these platforms that are fickle and ever changing. And I think that's really important. And we can also build, face-to-face communities, which I think is going to be increasingly important. And I think we have really lost that more recently.
I think you're right. I think that's where this is all probably going is that if you want to get the knowledge, you're going to have to go. It's the online accessibility is either going to go underground or we're going to have to go and like catch people face to face to get what
Mhm.
we need.
Very true. And I also, if you have an interest and you can't meet with me in person, face to face, and I recommend that you obviously come check me out virtually and online. But one kind of low lying fruit, so to speak, that you can reach for that some people overlook that has paid me out. So, it's been so valuable in my life is talk to your older people. Talk to your older people. If you're interested in gardening and you know someone that lives in your climate that gardens, the little old lady or the little old man down the road, and you're looking at their garden, go talk to them. They want to share the information they have, and they have cultivated years of information. I mean, my father's a grumpy old farmer. That's just a person. That's a whole that's just a whole mindset. And so it's all weeds to him, but he knows what all the plants are. And he
Yeah.
knows where they are on we have, a mass acreage. And so he knows where they are. He'll be like, "Oh, are you looking for this?" He'll take me for a ride on the mule or the tractor. "It's over here. It's over there. I didn't know that was, anything but a weed, but here you go." Or like our scubbernogs, he had fallen out of favor of using those since he was a kid, but he knew what they were. So
Mhm.
he had them all mapped out on the property. These types of things are really quickly going away.
Yeah.
There are some plants that some people from books will use for foraging, wildcrafting, bushcrafting, and I can tell you by listening to the older people, while in a vine you might use it, I don't want to use anything called cowitch vine. And there's a common plant out here that some people believe to be, you can use it for wreaths and things like that, and potentially even edible. But if it's called cow itch vine, if grandmama thought that the cows got itchy from it, I'm sorry, I can find something else. And so
Yeah.
there are these things that are, it's comical and you remember it, right? Like
Mhm.
it's those tales.
Mhm.
It's that rich history and the storytelling. So that is truly how humans have always passed down knowledge that surpassed anything that censorship
You're right.
could take away from us.
You're
It's
right.
it's sharing it with the kids and like Peter Rabbit and chamomile tea. Kids will remember that forever on some level. And so we can do that, We may
Mhm.
not ever take over and change Meta's mind, but we can do that. We can share in story and we can share in community and we can keep that alive.
Yeah, that's really empowering and definitely makes me feel better about it too. That you're right. Long before we had the internet and social media, there was a way to learn this stuff. And so when the day comes when they finally shut us out completely, people can still get it. They're just going to have to go back to the older ways to get it.
Yeah, but start learning now because they're
Yeah,
not getting younger.
right, right. So let me end with I always end with a positive, something positive to think about here. So for my audience, I hope you found this helpful, first of all. And if you did, don't forget to give a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and definitely check out all of Jess's content and make sure you give her a subscribe as well. I'm definitely learning a lot by watching her stuff, and I hope you do as well. I think as we wind this all down and we think about these, this knowledge that's gotten passed down, and for a while we've been blessed with social media to make it easier and more accessible. While these tools are still accessible to us, even if they're being somewhat suppressed and limited, I want to challenge everybody to, if you, and I know most of my audience also have their own channels, and I know some of you already do this, but I want to challenge everybody to this week try to find somebody else that is providing good knowledge out there, especially self-sufficiency, the kind of knowledge that is probably getting suppressed, and just give them a shout out on your social media. On YouTube, we've got our community tab page. A lot of people don't even use that. That's a great place to shout out another channel. If you are on Instagram, you can use stories every day. I try to shout out a couple people every day. Facebook, you can go ahead and go ahead and put somebody else's channel on your page. Just share them with some friends. Twitter and X, same thing. Just go ahead and I think it's called repost or whatever. So there's many, many ways we can still use this. For the moment, we still have some tools against censorship. I don't know that that's going to last forever. But our goal here should be to get this, not only to get this knowledge out to as many people as we can, but let's lift up those voices that are being pushed down because they need a hand. And this is one of the only ways we can do it right now.
All Absolutely. Right? I love that. Go find each other.
Go find each other. Exactly. Make some connections. Jess and I just found out that we live very close together. So at some point I'm going to have to take a class from her when she gets her live classes going.
That'd be great. We'd love to see you. Yeah. Go find each other. Go make some plant friends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what a fun thing to bond over too. All right, folks, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Make sure, as always, if you can, get outside, get some fresh air, some sunshine. Make sure you spend a little bit of time with your family and your pets. And make sure you spend a little bit of time this coming week lifting each other up. What are you saying there, Orlando? Your tears restrict me enough. You know what? I'm beyond caring at this point. I share out other people's content, whether they're being censored by Instagram or whatever. So I learned my lesson when I didn't stand up. I'll say that. When on Instagram, when other knife content creators were being silenced, and I just kind of kept my mouth shut, and then it happened to me. Yeah. And if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, I'm okay, they haven't found me yet. Okay. Just remember that I said that, and remember that they're coming for the homesteaders next, and they're coming from the homeschoolers next, and I think eventually it will be gardeners too. I think eventually they're that way. They'll come for the gardeners too. So, all right, everybody, you all have a great weekend. Keep planting your seeds. Keep stacking your silver. This is Jess and Prepping with Sarge. Good night, everybody.